Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. I'm back in Palm Beach, but my heart is still in Israel. In this week's Torah portion, we read about the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, which was built as a dwelling place for God's presence amongst the Jewish people. And we all know that the holiest room in the temple was the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. The entire temple was holy, but the Holy of Holies was the holiest room. And within the holiest room was the ark, which contained the tablets, the luchot, the covenant with God. But even holier and above the actual ark was the keruvim, the cherubim, the two images, two angelic images, which the Torah describes were facing one another. Because the Torah tells us that when God spoke to Moses, the voice of God emanated, mi bein shnei hakruvim. The voice of God emanated to Moses from between the two angelic images, the two faces of the cherubim, which were upon and above the ark, all chiseled from one block of gold on the cover, hovering above the tablets and the Torah. And the rabbis tell us this is the most profound message of Judaism, that there's the Holy of Holies within the holy temple. And within that there's the Torah, the covenant, the tablets that God gave to Moses, handmade. But above that is the image of two angelic faces looking at one another. And what the rabbis tell us is that this represents the love of one Jew to another. That when can God communicate to us? When can God reside in our midst? When can God dwell amongst the Jewish people? When we are looking and facing one another. God's voice comes from these two angelic beings, the two images of two faces, one towards another. Because what God loves the most is to see his children loving each other, united, acting in an angelic way with love towards each other. And this is what we saw on every single step of our journey throughout Israel. The face of the Jewish people is towards one another. And that's why I have so much optimism and confidence that the future is bright. Because when we look at each other with love, face one another, then we are in the highest spiritual plane. And God's presence rests amongst us, and God dwells within us, and God communicates to us. And this is something we heard time and again. One of the hostages we met with was Ohad Ben Ami. He was taken captive with his wife. His wife was returned home to Israel after a month and a half, and he just got out 2 weeks ago. And he has 3 beautiful daughters and a wife that were waiting for him for 15 months. And I'm sure you all saw the images of him embracing his wife and his 3 daughters. And he shared with us many beautiful, inspiring stories about his 15 months in captivity. But one of the things he said was that he was together with 5 other hostages. And they were held in this tiny space, which was less than 100 square feet, like 6 meters. They were crammed together. And they had to live like this for 15 months. And he said sometimes there was disagreements, for example, about space issues in this tiny quarters. Or when they were given food sometimes, should we eat it all now? Should we save some of it? How it should be divided up? Or when they had to decide if they should request something from the Hamas terrorists who were holding them captive. Everything you wanted, you have to go and ask them for. And if you ask them for something and they get upset, they can retaliate towards you and punish you for even requesting, or deny you future requests for a long time because you only get to ask for so many things. So sometimes they would have discussions, the 6 of them. Should we ask for this? Maybe it's better not to ask. Maybe we should save the request for something else. And so he said because the other 5 hostages were much younger than him and he was the most senior, he took it upon himself to be the leader of the group. And he said anytime there was a disagreement, he would quiet everyone down. And then he would say, okay, tell me your position. What's your opinion? And he would act like a judge, listening to everyone's opinion. Let everyone speak their mind on what should be done or how they should conduct themselves. And then he said they would take a vote. And based on the vote, they would decide how to act in any given circumstance. And that's in captivity. Keeping peace, keeping unity, keeping the group cohesive, making sure that there's no disagreements or fighting, God forbid. Because when people are united as one, they could endure and overcome everything. And he said, my mission was to keep us strongly, closely knit together and never allow any dissension amongst the group. And then he very movingly told us the following. He said that every once in a while they would give them a little treat, like a little piece of halava, something sweet. And he said he would put it away. He would put it aside and not eat it. And he would save it for a special day, like the birthday of one of his daughters or his marriage wedding anniversary date. And then he would take out this little piece of halava and say to his 5 friends in captivity, today's our anniversary, my wife and I. Today's my daughter's birthday, and talk about his daughter and how wonderful and how much he loves her. And then they would sing Yom Haledet Sameach to her in the Gaza tunnels, and they would share the little piece of halava. And I said to myself, this is what the verse says. They're facing one another. Sometimes we can't even see one another. Ehud couldn't see his wife and children, but he was facing them. His heart was towards them. And God says, that's the holiest place on earth. That's where I come and descend and speak to you and give you strength. And that's how they survived and endured, because they were always looking at each other and looking towards the Jewish people and looking towards the loved ones. And that's what brought them home to their loving families. Let us remember this lesson, that when we look at each other with loving eyes, with angelic faces, with kindness, when we think about one another, that's when God comes and speaks to us and strengthens us and gives us his presence to overcome all obstacles and challenges. Have a wonderful day.